What is up, guys? My name is Sid Corrigan, and we are back on F1 24 Driver Career. This is Season 2, Episode number 6 today for the Austrian Grand Prix. Coming up. So we are coming off a very difficult race around Spain. Go see that episode first if you haven't seen it yet before you see this one. It's a short, disappointing episode as we suffered our first DNF of the season with an engine failure on just the third lap of the race. And Verstappen retook the lead in the Drivers' Championship with a win. So it was a bit of a double whammy for us in Catalonia. We're going to head into Austria looking to bounce back strong. It's also a sprint weekend, so there's a lot of potential points on the table. As we take a look at the development chart heading into Austria, there's not a lot of time between the last race and this one, so we will have no upgrades heading into the race. Looks like McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari all brought small upgrades, as I find myself 5 points back of Max, and Leclerc a further 16 back of myself. Still close at this early stage of the season. Let's see what kind of pace we have in Austria. Let's head to qualifying.
High up in the mountains here at Spielberg, it's time for qualifying on what will be the fastest laps of the season. Stand by for qualifying at the Austrian Grand Prix.
So I waited as long as possible to do my final lap here in SQ1 as the rain has lightened up significantly over the course of this first session. I did do a banker lap, but we are dropping quickly as the track is drying out. So this will be our only lap to get a decent time in as we have a bit of a slide coming through turn 7. Able to keep the speed up reasonably well. Coming through the final corners, we're nearly 2 seconds up. As we have a bit of a lock up through the final corner.
Down to P20.
Very nearly lost it through that last corner, and that's good enough for 5th. And good enough to see us through into SQ2. Our teammate also makes it through in 12th. Piastri tops the session in the McLaren, and 2 huge surprise exits with Norris and Verstappen being eliminated in 17th and 18th. And as I head onto my final run in SQ2, can see the weather has totally changed and dried out, and my lap earlier in the session on the only set of mediums we have was only good enough for 9th. So again, at the end of the session, I'm gonna have to find a lap if I want to see my way through into SQ3 and maximize my opportunity to gain points on Verstappen, who along with Norris and Leclerc were knocked out in SQ1. I get some understeer through turn 7, struggling a bit with that corner in the wet and the dry.
Right, we're right on the cusp now. We've been pushed down to P11.
I am finding a decent improvement of nearly half a second over my first lap. The track is drying and improving. And that will be good enough to see me through in 2nd, as Piastri again tops the session, showing the McLaren does have pace, and my teammate misses out on SQ3 by 6 thousandths to Ocon in the Alpine, and Ricciardo in the RB will have his best start of the season in 12th.
All set, we're ready to go, so let's get the car out onto the track.
As I start my final run of SQ3, I've got a little bit of traffic ahead of me. I think that's Piastri, and I have the Ferrari of Tsunoda catching a huge slipstream off me all the way down the long straight up the hill towards turn 3, as the Ferrari was able to gain massively, being tucked up right behind me all the way down the straight. He loses some time, taking an odd line into turn 3, but he will catch more slipstream off me, heading down the hill to turn 4. I left myself a little bit of leeway to do a second lap this time, so I won't be under the kind of pressure I was under in SQ1 and 2, but I will fully admit that it was a bit distracting to have the Ferrari so close behind me as I finally make a good run through turns 7 and 8, gaining some time on Tsunoda behind, as he clearly did not leave himself enough room to do a lap. We're gonna dump the rest of the battery to the line. Definitely my cleanest lap of the weekend so far, and that's good enough for second. But Alonso and Perez are able to find time and knock me down to fourth as Piastri pulls the trifecta and tops every session of the weekend so far, finding himself on sprint pole just ahead of the second Red Bull of Perez. Let's head to the sprint.
So it's all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? The Spielberg circuit then is situated 700 meters above sea level, with just 10 corners making up one of the shortest laps of the season. One time around here is a distance of around 2.6 miles, with the best overtaking chances into turn 1 or the tight uphill of turn 3. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Oscar Piastri lines up on pole position. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Fernando Alonso, a Haas, Stroll, Tsunoda, Gasly, Ocon, Albon, Russell, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Sainz, Bottas, Sargent, Joe, Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton rounds off the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
So as we get ready for the formation lap, it looks like everyone will be starting on the medium tire. We also have an opportunity to gain some points on Leclerc, who's third in the driver's standings currently, as he also found himself knocked out in SQ1.
Okay, so let's go through all the gears if you can. We need to make sure the engagement is okay before the start. We're going to want to put some temperature into the tyres and brakes. We need to keep the engine cool though, so don't go too high with the revs.
And the 5 red lights. The Austrian sprint is underway as we had quite a long hold off the start. We get a little bit of wheel spin as Alonso cuts across us. Piastri drops some positions as we nearly clatter into the back of the Aston Martin as he battled Piastri through turn 1. As Stroll in the second Aston Martin got a monster start off the line and has made his way all the way up to second. We make a late lunge up the inside of Alonso, but he's able to hold on around the outside of turn 3.
Okay, the start was fine. Let's try and move forward.
As we tuck into the slipstream of the Aston Martin and go for another late dive up the inside, this time through turn 4, as Stroll and Piastri are battling over second just ahead of us. They continue their side-by-side battle through turn 6, as Piastri is just able to reclaim second, and the big winner in all of this is Perez in the Red Bull, who got away clean off the line and may have already broken the DRS to Piastri and Stroll when it starts on the next lap. And Verstappen is up 3 positions over the first lap. He is trying to chase down Sainz for another position. They go side by side, both cars having the DRS, and Verstappen is able to make his way through in the heavy braking zone of turn 3 as he quickly tries to overcome his poor qualifying. As I look for a way through this battle between Stroll and Piastri, but I get boxed in, and Alonso takes the opportunity to try to make an audacious move around the outside of turn 3. And to be fair, I was so busy looking ahead that Alonso's move caught me completely by surprise as we try to go back up the inside with the exact same move we used on Alonso last time. Back past Alonso, back up into P4. But all of this battling between myself and Alonso and Piastri and Stroll,
A problem with their car.
is letting Perez run. So it's Stroll that has some kind of mechanical issue with his car. He's dropping back from Piastri as we go side by side through turn 1 with Stroll around the outside. So with the Aston Martin's mechanical issues, it makes it much easier for us to get through this lap. And I can focus my attention on Piastri ahead. Maybe the McLaren and I can share DRS and close the gap to Perez in first. And as Stroll's mechanical issue continues, he's under pressure from Tsunoda in the Ferrari, having already lost a position to his teammate. That's some very bad luck for Stroll, who was having a very strong sprint race up until that issue. As we check in on our teammate, who's currently running in 11th. Just ahead of him, that's Albin in the Williams. That's slowing down and having to pull off to the side of the road. So another driver with mechanical issues, but this one is going to force Albin out of the sprint. Check in on our title rival, Verstappen. He's trying to make his way into the points for the first time today as he goes 3 wide with Stroll and Leclerc. As Stroll continues to plummet down the order, Verstappen came out of that the best, up into 8th and the final points paying position. Leclerc also came past Stroll, and Stroll's now under pressure from Gasly in the Alpine as they go side by side through turn 4, continuing the battle through the small kink of turn 5 towards the high-speed left-hander of turn 6. Stroll does manage to fend off the Alpine, but it's a little consolation as he's fallen way out of the points now. As we head onto the penultimate lap, I'm going to burn some battery trying to catch up to Piastri, as I'm going to make a late move into turn 3, have a bit of a lockup and run deep. We're going to have to let Piastri back through. That was a bit too aggressive, and that move was just born out of a bit of frustration, having been stuck behind the McLaren for the last several laps and unable to make my way through.
Okay, you're in the dirty air of the car in front. Let's get past them. Okay, you've just started the final lap of the race. Final lap.
We make a little bit of contact with the back of Piastri through turn 1. He was very slow on the apex. I finally have a good run on the McLaren using a lot of battery. Piastri goes defensive, and I make another mistake running deep into turn 3 and getting onto that sausage curb. Piastri's able to get back past, and he got the DRS. I'm going to use all of my battery. We have one more move in us, down into turn 4, but we have to back out of it. Just didn't have the speed with him having the DRS, so the mistakes into the uphill turn 3 over the last 2 laps gonna end up costing me a point. I let second place slip through my fingers as Perez comes through the final corners to win the Austrian sprint in dominant fashion. Piastri, who did an excellent job defending from us, will take second, and we will round out the podium for the sprint in 3rd.
Okay, good job, mate. Really, really well done. That was a fantastic drive. Bring it home.
So Verstappen ends up salvaging 1 point from a very bad qualifying, recovering up to 8th from the back of the grid, and the 5 points that I picked up on Verstappen in the sprint race draws us dead even in the Drivers' Championship fight. Let's see what we can do in the race. Let's head to qualifying.
High up in the mountains here at Spielberg, it's time for qualifying on what will be the fastest laps of the season. Stand by for qualifying at the Austrian Grand Prix.
So this was the only run I did here in Q1. I waited until the end of the session. Normally I would do a banker lap, but I didn't feel like I needed the practice. After just doing the sprint, I didn't make any changes to the setup between the sprint and the race, as it is supposed to rain for a good portion of the race. So even though I struggled a bit with straight line speed and overtaking in the dry, I thought the higher wings might pay off in the rain. As I do make it through Q1 with 1 lap in 7th, Verstappen seems to be back in form after a very difficult sprint qualifying, topping the session, but my teammate's struggles continue as he is eliminated in Q1, along with Bottas, Ricciardo, Sargent, and Zhou. So I headed out early here in Q2 as there was a threat of rain, and just as I reached turn 3, the rain has started to fall. So this is going to be our only run here in Q2 as the rain just continued to get heavier throughout the session. So a lot of pressure on us during this lap as we head through turn 6. These high-speed corners get treacherous as the grip starts to fall away. I was a little bit tentative through turn 7. We ended up getting a decent run, but I absolutely did not want to invalidate my lap, so I left myself a little bit of a margin through turn 9. The grip felt okay, and I very nearly ran wide and invalidated through turn 10, and that lap was good enough to get us up into 2nd and good enough to see us through in 3rd as Norris topped the mixed weather session, and this time it was the Mercedes drivers who got caught out in qualifying, with Russell and Hamilton eliminated in 14th and 15th. But Sainz in the RB had a very good qualifying, just missing Q3 down in 11th. So this was my best run of Q3. The weather is very tricky. It's right on the edge between full wets and intermediates. And the lap's been a little bit shabby so far as I got a little bit of understeer in the uphill turn 3. And these are my first real wet weather laps with my new wheel and pedals. So I'm struggling a little bit trying to feel my way around the grip as I have a decent run through turn 7, but I left myself a little bit of margin there as well as I'm struggling with the car sliding mid-corner at the moment. As I head through the final corners, I'm going to use the rest of the battery to the line, and that's good enough for provisional pole, but it wasn't a great lap. So let's see where we end up. And we end up finishing down in 8th. So definitely not my best performance over that Q3 lap. Verstappen will start from pole. He and Leclerc in second set the exact same lap time. You don't see that every day. Verstappen set the lap first, so pole position will go to him. Let's head to the grid.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spielberg and to a circuit that in one form or another has held every Austrian Grand Prix in the championship except the very first back in 1964. It was at this race that John Watson lost a bet and his beard when he took Team Penske's only F1 victory in 1976. If anything, the stakes are even higher today. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday and he'll start from pole position with Charles Leclerc alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Perez, Stroll, Haas, Albon, Sainz, Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Russell, Gasly, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Ricciardo, Sargent, and Zhou Guanyu. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track.
So very tricky conditions to start the race. Everyone's on the extreme wet tire. We're gonna have to be smart about when we decide to switch to the intermediates. We might be able to move forward if we're smart about when we decide to pit.
Okay, so let's go through all the gears if you can. We need to make sure the engagement is okay before the start. We're going to want to put some temperature into the tyres and brakes. We need to keep the engine cool though, so don't go too high with the revs.
The rain is supposed to totally stop about halfway through the race, so we're going to see all the conditions today. It definitely made for deciding on the setup a lot more tricky. The key to this race will be staying out of trouble through the first several corners.
Okay, incredible parking there, nice one. That's going to give you the edge if you can get good launch as the race starts.
And the 5 red lights. And the Austrian Grand Prix is underway. We get a little bit of a delayed start and a ton of wheel spin on the extreme wets as Albon goes around the outside of us, moves to the inside and kind of clogs it up, but then he drifts back out, giving us a little bit of a sliver to the inside. I take advantage getting past Stroll as Albon got concertinaed up behind the Aston Martin, as I have to burn a lot of battery down this straight as I did not get a good exit out of turn 1. As Perez and Piastri are side by side in front, we are able to finish off the move on Stroll, up 1 position into 7th. As I set my sights on Perez just ahead, he doesn't seem to have the pace that he did in the sprint, as we are going to make a late move up the inside through turn 4, as Perez lost the back end a little bit through the corner and opened up the door for us to make that move. As I set my sights on Piastri and Tsunoda ahead. Tsunoda, of course, is my rival, so I want to get past him as soon as possible. The grip is a little iffy as I'm sliding around here through turns 6 and 7, still trying to find the limit under these conditions. The lap later, I'm still struggling through sector 2, and Perez has a good run. He makes a move to the inside, but is forced to back out of it on the entrance to turn 9. So far in this race, sectors 1 and 3 feel fine, but I'm really struggling for grip through the high-speed turns in sector 2. And as I head on to lap 4, I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 6.7 seconds.
I've fallen a second and a half back of Piastri, and I'm under pressure from Perez.
You're losing a small amount of time to the car behind, just keep pushing.
As Mark so helpfully just pointed out, losing a little bit of time to Perez. Hopefully we'll have better pace on the intermediates. as the car feels really nervous through the high-speed corners. We'll definitely have better pace in the dry, as my setup is the dry setup with the wings up 1 or 2 clicks.
Okay, so that's a red flag,
Oh.
overtaking, and let's get back into the pit.
And what happened behind us? So it looks like the problem starts with Ocon as he heads up towards turn 3. He's not battling anyone. He just takes too much curb and spins and brings everyone P13 down to a grinding halt. And I think that's Joe who decides just to cut across the grass. So Ocon, with an unforced error, brings out the red flag.
Start spot on, come on.
And as we get back underway, looks like everyone is on the hard tires as the track is dried out in the time it took to clean up the mess at turn 3, as we go aggressively up the inside of Albon, retaking 7th as the Williams driver again got the better launch. And Perez also made his way past, but Albon has kept his foot in and makes his way back past in a straight line. We'll go back up the inside of turn 3, box him in behind Perez, and finish off the double overtake to regain our original start position, as there were again yellow flags through turn 3. This time there's no safety car, as Perez tries to go around the outside, trying to take advantage of my bad exit through turn 3, but I'm able to fend him off and hold on to 6th for the moment, as now that we've reached the dry period, it's essential that I stay within 1 second of Piastri ahead. For the first time today, the DRS is active as Leclerc tries to make a move around the outside through turn 1 for the lead of the race. Verstappen has managed to stay side by side, as now he'll have the advantage of the DRS towards turn 3, as Tsunoda's trying to get involved as well, as Verstappen has retaken the lead, and it's the Ferraris doing battle side by side through turn 3. And they're both hurting their team. If they push this battle too hard, they're going to let Verstappen run away with this race, but Tsunoda stays aggressive, going up the inside through turn 4, and somehow Leclerc was able to hold that around the outside without dipping a tire in the gravel, and now Leclerc will have the inside through turn 6, and it is Leclerc who's finally able to finish off the move. That battling has allowed Verstappen to break the DRS, as Piastri's trying to get past, forcing us into a defensive move into turn 3, as the Ferraris again are doing battle ahead, as I am struggling a little bit for straight line speed. The weather did indicate that it was going to rain further into the race, so my wings are not at the ideal level for the majority of this race being dry. That will help us with tire preservation, as I don't think anyone is going to come in for a pit stop, which means we're going to be doing 30 of the 36 laps on this one set of hard tires, as I use some battery to close up to the back of Norris, who turns his battery off well before the corner. We're going to make a late move up the inside into turn 3, nearly hit the back of Tsunoda. I had to slam on the brakes to avoid going into the back of the Ferrari, which has compromised my exit, giving Norris a good run.
Nice move, keep going.
As he makes a move to the inside, we're going to have to try to hold it around the outside through turn 4. I did leave some space in case he wanted to keep his nose in, but the McLaren driver does decide to back out of it, and we've made our way up into 4th, as Sainz in the RB is trying to make a move up the inside of Russell in the Mercedes, and Ocon, who had the earlier spin and brought out the red flag, is going to make it 3 wide into turn 3. Somehow all 3 cars make it through without any contact, as Russell comes out on the short end as the only driver that did not get the DRS down this straight, but the 3-wide battle continues down into turn 4 as Russell wisely decides to back out of it, as there's just not enough room to go 3 wide there, and Sainz will just be able to fend off Ocon as he has the inside line through turn 6. So really nice driving from all 3 of those guys, as the Ferraris are again doing battle through turn 1 as Norris tries to make a move up the inside of us. I am able to fend it off and also get a very good run on Tsunoda, who did not get the DRS and had a compromised exit through turn 1. Tsunoda goes defensive, but unlike the sprint, I am able to finish off the move around the outside through turn 3, and I get the DRS off Leclerc ahead. And now we can see how much time was actually lost by the Ferraris as they did battle over the last several laps. Verstappen has been able to open a 3.5 second gap as I used some battery and the DRS to have a run on Leclerc, who looked like he was going to go defensive up the straight, but decided to go back to the outside and have a huge lockup into turn 3. I very nearly spun the car in the same spot that Ocon did.
We've lost a position, that's us down a place.
Leclerc has gotten away, Norris has gotten through, Tsunoda's trying to get past as well. We're gonna go back up the inside of Tsunoda through turn 4, but that was a costly mistake. I went from almost having second place to battling for 4th, as Norris, who took advantage of my mistake a couple laps ago, is trying to make a move up the inside of Leclerc for 2nd. Their battling has allowed me to close back up after my costly mistake, and Leclerc is able to hold on to 2nd through the exit of turn 6.
So we're leading our teammate by 10.2 seconds.
As Norris makes contact with Leclerc through turn 1, Leclerc pinched Norris tight to the inside, giving me the opportunity to go around the outside of Norris and have a good run on Leclerc, as he did not have the DRS. I have another lockup into turn 3, this time thankfully far less severe. Leclerc did try to hold it to the inside.
Nice work, mate. That brings you up a place.
But he compromised his exit out of turn 3, and it's Tsunoda who's making a charge, getting past his teammate and trying to go around the outside of us through turn 4, but he thinks better of it. Happy enough with 3rd for the moment, knowing he'll have plenty more opportunities with the DRS. And 1 lap later, Tsunoda is trying to take advantage of the DRS. I go defensive, but I'm not going to fight this too hard as I tuck back in behind Tsunoda through turn 3. I don't want to fight it too hard and invite Leclerc and Norris into the fight as we check in on our teammate, who's way down the order in 16th. He's going to pick up a free position here as Gasly is going slowly. Something on his Renault engine has failed. It looks like he's going to be able to pull it off the side of the road and not bring out a safety car. Unfortunately for us, as that would have allowed us to reel Verstappen in as we pressurize Tsunoda with the DRS. And Tsunoda has a huge lockup through turn 1 and bounces over the sausage curb, and Tsunoda is dropped all the way to 5th with that mistake. And 1 lap further on, it's the other Ferrari putting pressure on us from behind, and Leclerc is able to use the DRS to make his way through as we have another little bit of a lockup.
Try to stay with them. They might make
Making a little bit of contact with the back of Leclerc, very much compromising my exit out of turn 3. That was a mistake caused by indecision, as I thought about attacking back up the inside and then decided to back out of it very late. And a couple laps later, Tsunoda is still paying for that mistake into turn 1 as he has fallen off the back of Norris, and Piastri in the 2nd McLaren is able to go around the outside through turn 3 and move up into 5th, and Tsunoda's finding himself under pressure from Perez as well. And with 13 laps left, the tires are starting to feel a little bit second-hand as they approach 25% wear. The only upside is that everybody is in the exact same boat since the red flag restart, so tire wear upgrades could play a key factor at the end of this Grand Prix, as Leclerc is again filling up my mirrors as I have a very bad exit out of turn 3, having a bit of a snap, accelerating off the curb, and that's going to give Leclerc a very good run on us, making his way through before we even get to the braking zone. I debated going for a dive bomb there, but decided better of it and backed out of it. And without pressure from behind now, I am able to decide when I want to go for the moves on Leclerc. As we go for a move up the inside through turn 4, I have a bit of a slide through the mid-corner, and Leclerc has a bit of a wiggle, trying to get back on the power. The tire wear is definitely starting to reveal itself. I haven't had very many laps where I could just tire save, as I've been in battles with Norris and both Ferraris seemingly every lap, and Leclerc is again putting the pressure on, this time through turn 1. I am able to hold it around the outside, and I got the DRS, but I've been unable to shake the lead Ferrari driver for the latter third of this race. And more bad news, Norris has been able to close within a second of Leclerc, so he'll soon be injecting himself into this fight. And with just 3 laps left, Sainz is going slowly, and there's the telltale puff of smoke out of the back of the RB. So very bad luck for Sainz, as he's still struggling to find pace. He was well ahead of his teammate before his engine gave out, and he had his strongest qualifying of the season, so there are positives for Sainz. As on the penultimate lap, Norris is trying to make a move on Leclerc as they go side by side up the hill towards turn 3. I think the McLaren might be a little bit more friendly to its tires than the Ferrari, as Norris has really been able to close that gap to Leclerc over the last several laps.
Okay, this is your final lap. Final lap lap of the race. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 22.4 seconds.
And as we start our final lap, we have been able to break the DRS to Leclerc, as he's been embroiled in the battle with Norris, and this battle has really taken the heat off of us over the final 2 laps. As Leclerc goes defensive into turn 3, Norris tries to take the long way around, but I believe it's the McLaren who's gonna have the DRS through the final DRS zone down the hill towards turn 4. And it is the McLaren who has the DRS. Leclerc tries to go defensive, but Norris easily makes his way through, up into 3rd, and onto the final podium position as Verstappen comes through the final corners and wins a dominant Austrian Grand Prix. The Red Bull bounces back strong from his rough sprint race as we make our way through the final corners for a very strong 2nd place finish.
There was no Verstappen, Max Verstappen. He takes victory.
They led from lights out to the flag at the end, and their race victory was never in doubt, was it? Brilliant stuff by them.
So Verstappen bounces back strong after a fairly shaky start to the weekend.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.
Red Bull showing that they do in fact have the best car in the field with a win in the sprint race and a win in the feature race. But we were able to stay close in the championship by being consistent. The 3rd place finish in the sprint and a 2nd place finish in the race. I have to say I'm pretty happy leaving Austria, especially coming off what happened in Spain, the race before this one. So Verstappen gains 1 point on us in the Drivers' Championship after we total up the points from the sprint and feature race. I was able to grab the bonus point for fastest lap as well. Unfortunately, our teammate was unable to score any points in either the sprint or feature, so no help in the constructors. And in the end, Perez was able to get past Tsunoda for 5th, so that lockup into turn 1 ended up costing Tsunoda dearly. And in the drivers' standings, we find ourselves just 6 points back of Verstappen in the title hunt, and Leclerc a further 29 points back of myself. And in the constructors, we're just 11 points back of Ferrari for 2nd. So if I could get a little bit of help from Hülkenberg, 2nd place is a real possibility in the constructors. And our rivalry with Verstappen highlights our 6-point deficit in the drivers' standings. We are, however, dead even in our bitter rivalry with Tsunoda, both of us currently rocking an 82 rating, and our rating will definitely get a better boost than his after scoring podiums in both the sprint and feature race for us this weekend. And I hadn't realized how close the constructors battle was going into Austria. Man, I would love to beat Ferrari in the constructors after they went outside their own driver academy to take Tsunoda for their 2nd seat over me. And I think there's a glitch because we did accomplish all of our specialist goals, but for some reason it's saying we failed the strategy analyst goal. I'll have to go back and review that and make sure. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for this weekend. I'll see you next weekend for the British Grand Prix. Hopefully we can have another strong weekend around Silverstone. Until then, guys, goodbye.